All right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome all of you to the fifth of the series, the last one, writing and structuring chapter 5. As I said that in my last session, that there are different ways of structuring a thesis or dissertation in different institutions, different universities, all right? And I also have mentioned that I'm taking the approach of chapter 4 should be just presenting your data analysis and findings. And chapter 5 would be discussion and conclusions. And that's the way I have presented chapter 4 last week. Okay. Chapter 5. Chapter 5 actually, to me, the most important chapter, the most impactful chapter. The chapter gives you your PhD degree. All right. We have reviewed literature in chapter 2. Based on the information extracted, you develop theoretical framework. And then the storyline that you said in chapter 1, the research problem, research questions, research objectives, all that. Now in chapter 5, readers will try to see whether you have answered all the questions that you have constructed in chapter 1, right? As we say, the thesis or dissertation is just a piece of work. It's just one piece of work. So therefore, there must be a coherent and logical sequence and good flow in presentation. Starting from chapter 1, it should be flowing up to the chapter 5, and that's where we end our dissertation. And I always say that thesis is basically telling and selling your stories. You set up the storyline in chapter 1, and you continue trailing people by dramatizing, the events, doing literature review, setting theoretical framework, constructing, research hypothesis, designing research questionnaire, collecting data, analyzing data, and finally, in the final chapter, now you have to make a conclusion. The takeaway sort of statements, takeaway sort of conclusions, recommendations that a reader will feel, oh yeah, this was a great job. This student has done a great job, and I have many things to take away from the thesis. And that's why I say chapter 5 is the most impactful thesis, and that actually gives you your PhD degree. Okay. So before I start sharing my slide, let me also inform you that today I will share a Google form towards the end of the session. If you fill in, you will get a cert, e-cert, as if like you have attended all 5 sessions. Okay. I said I'm not going to give certificate for the first 4 sessions, but the final session I'm going to give a cert, and that one will not mention about chapter 5. Rather, we'll say that you have attended a webinar on writing and structuring PhD or DBA thesis and dissertation. Okay. So you will get a cert. And today's one, my daughter, who usually prepares the cert, who is only in Form 1 now, she has made it auto-generated certificate, meaning once you fill in the form, immediately you will get the cert. So you don't have to wait longer. All right, the PLA session, the second one, I haven't given you the cert because my daughter was having exam. She was busy. So now from today onward, all sessions organized by platform for research and development, certificates will be auto-generated. Once you fill in the form, you will immediately get the cert. Okay. All right. So with that, let me share the slide, and we will start from there. Okay. All right. So this is chapter 5, writing, structuring thesis, dissertation. Chapter 5, I have talked about what we mean by thesis and dissertation in my first presentation. Okay, let me see whether the slide presentation works. Okay, if it works, then I will use it. Let me see in the YouTube whether it is changing there. Okay, it doesn't seem to be changing in the YouTube, so meaning that I cannot use the slideshow. Okay, so I have to use this mode. All right, so this is chapter 4, discussion and conclusion. It doesn't mean that this chapter will only have discussion and conclusions, okay? As I said, this is the final chapter. You will have many things in between, okay? So this is a suggested content. This is the suggested content for chapter 5. You will start with an introduction, then you will have recapitulation of the study, then you will have the discussion in alignment with each research questions, or possibly each hypothesis is up to the institution's guideline where you have enrolled and doing your PhD, okay? Followed by contributions of the study or significance of the findings. Either one is fine. Certain institutions will prefer contributions of the study. Some institutions will prefer to have significance of findings, or possibly some supervisors will prefer this section to be contributions of the study. Some supervisors may prefer it to be significance of the findings. I have also noticed, few theses whereby students use both significance of the findings as well as contributions of the study. And that's why we see many replication and duplications are there. I would prefer or suggest that you just use one. That should be fine, okay? Followed by recommendations, limitations of the study, suggestions for future research, and conclusions. That is another common mistakes you always see with the students. They will just write conclusion. That's it. That's what they said. But I would always say you are not going to make one conclusion. There are many conclusions there. Many. Because if you have 4 research questions, you have 4 different conclusions. Okay. Of course, at the end, you may have a final concluding sentence of your dissertation, but you have many conclusions here under this subsection. Okay. So let's move into the first section. We see introduction for chapter 1. 5.1, we see introduction. This chapter will definitely start the introduction by describing what this section is going to present. Okay. This chapter going to present. But before that, you can follow it from chapter 4. You may start like chapter 4 presented the findings, data analysis and findings. And this chapter is going to, talk about recapitulation, discussion, and so on. The one I have shown you in earlier slide, okay? And when it comes to recapitulation of this study, as I say, this chapter is the main chapter that actually entitles you to get a PhD. Everything is yours. Chapter 5, everything comes from you, okay? So here you will summarize the argument of dissertation in terms of what you attempted to find out and what you accomplished, okay? So here now, you are describing or presenting the research, reminding the reader the research questions that you talked about in chapter 1. So a reader, when he reads chapter, he or she reads chapter 5, remember, all right, these are the research questions the researcher attempted to answer. Rather, otherwise, if you don't do that, the reader has to go back to chapter 1 and come back to chapter 5. So you want to make the examiner's life easy. Remember, examiners are very important factors to help you pass in the final viva whatsoever, okay? So examiners are very important personalities, and you have to somehow create an atmosphere, even the write-up presentation in a way that the reader feel comfortable reading, okay? And that's the reason we do it here. Chapter 5, at the beginning, we recapitulate what we wanted to do in this thesis, okay? Now, the most important chapter, right? The most important chapter of a thesis, discussion, okay? And here, many students, what they will do, they might just replicate what they have done in the presentation of finding chapter. And that's the reason I recommend that presentation of findings and discussion got to be separated. If you put it together, what will happen? You will have more focus on presentation of findings and will have less focus on discussion. Okay. So here we will be looking at, examiners will be looking at how thorough is your discussion and interpretations. So when it comes to chapter 4, you have just presented your findings. You have not really interpreted in a way like it relevance to the industry, it relevance to the other stakeholders and all that. Okay. Have the main point to emerge from the results have picked for discussion. When you run the data and you have the findings with you, there will be certain key findings of the research that makes your thesis different from others, that makes your thesis impactful compared to others who have done similar topic research before. So key point, major point got to be highlighted. That's where many students will do mistakes here. When you read discussion, they do a solo discussion in it's like following a flow and having findings there and followed by comparing with the literature and all that, failing to highlight what is so different that you found compared to the previous researchers. That's very important that you got to keep in mind. Number 2, are there links made to the literature? Every findings that you have, you got to now tally with the previous researchers' findings. Now you are going back to the literature and seeing your findings is similar with how many researchers' findings, and whether your findings are different from other research findings. Okay. For example, like if you have a findings which is very similar to 90% of researchers that you have reviewed, and it is contrary to the other 10%, both got to be mentioned. Okay. So you are showing the similarities and contradictions of your findings with the previous researchers. Okay. Number 3, is there enough evidence in your data to attempt a theory building or recapitulation of the problems? So now you are looking at even bit deeper in the discussion, whether you are developing some kind of theory. Okay. I'm going to talk about detail later when you talk about contributions of the study. Say, for example, through your research, you may extend a theory. You might be combining 2-3 theories together, and thus you're proposing an integrated framework. So you'll be highlighting that, during the discussion, that your findings somehow extend this model or extend this theory. Your findings have been successful in combining 2-3 theories together to integrate, and propose a new framework. Or your findings somehow modified the theory, or your findings nullified the theory. Okay, so now you are coming back to the theory. Remember in chapter 2, when you presented literature review, you have talked about findings of previous researchers, and then you try to connect with the theory that underpin your studies, right? So you have an underpinning theory, possibly may have few supporting theories that you have discussed in chapter 2 now. Now we are relating with your theory also. Earlier one, are there any links to the literature? So you are looking at your findings of previous researchers and your findings. But the next one is not. It is deeper. You are relating with the theory, whether you are developing a theory, you are not really developing, you are modifying, extending, you are nullifying and all that. Okay, so we'll be discussing a bit more later. Are there any speculations? Are you making any speculations based on the findings we have? Can you infer something that is, going to happen in future based on the findings that you have? That is also another good point to look at. And then you are looking at, are they well grounded? Okay, can be substantiated with your own data. So you are looking at, when you say grounded, meaning you are looking at whether your data is enough, whether you have adequate data to support, the research question, the hypothesis that you have tested before. So you're now connecting with your data also, right? So that's how discussion, the main section in chapter 5, and probably the most prominent section in your whole thesis, okay, that is completely your own writing, okay. And you continue, okay, discuss the findings of the study in terms of main research questions, hypothesis, as well as title of the research. So you are now keeping everything in mind that what was your title of research, what were your research questions, and what are those hypotheses being constructed. Okay, so you're keeping in mind while you are presenting your discussion. Okay, at the same time, you have to try to explain the significance and non-significance of the study results. Okay, this is something very important to me, and that's where many students will do mistakes. Students tend to discuss only those are significant. So say, for example, you have 5 hypotheses, 3 hypotheses accepted and 2 hypotheses rejected. So students prefer to have more discussion on those hypotheses accepted, all right, because he has made assumption that there's a relationship, but there's no relationship, and now his hypothesis is confirmed. So he is like more interested discussing on the significant factors, and forget that the non-significant factors are also equally important. Okay, if previous research says everyone found a factor to be significant, and your research shows it is not significant, then it is a contribution, my brothers and sisters. Please take note. Please take note. This is something very important, which many students will tend to forget when they write discussion chapters. They highlight only those are significant and forget to highlight non-significant one. Because when you constructed hypothesis, you constructed hypothesis with the support from the literature. And when you have the literature support, meaning you expect them to be significant, and when it turns out to be non-significant, that is also a good findings. Okay, there's also good findings, because your findings are totally different from others. So if your research is undertaken in the context of Malaysia, of course, the environment here is different. If we talk about industrial, environment, if we talk about working environment in different industries, in the government sector, in the university, and all that, could be very different from the Western countries, could be very different from African countries. So you have a new premise of research, a different premise of research. So it is expected that you may have different findings from other research. So non-significant findings. A hypothesis rejected doesn't mean that you have failed, to show to the people that your findings are similar to others. So if you find a hypothesis is not significant, please don't get worried. Okay, don't get worried. What you have to do is you refer back to your demographic profile of respondents and connect it that this is the possible reason why your findings is totally different. Or connect to your country, the premise where you have conducted the research. Find something very special features. Possibly, if you are doing a research on, say, for example, manufacturing industry, here the policies could be very different from the policies in the industrial sector in the Western country. And that got to be highlighted. So you can argue and infer your opinion that your findings are different from others because of these following reasons. The policies are different, environment is different, okay? The legal framework is different. Something you got to find out why. You got to rationalize and justify why your findings are different and why your hypothesis is not accepted or rejected, whereby previous researcher, they found it to be significant. So that's what you have to do, okay? That should be just nice and acceptable. Now, this does not mean that your research can reject all hypotheses, okay? Say, for example, you have 5 hypotheses and all 5 are rejected. Of course, that thesis is not going to be acceptable. If 1, 2 not accepted is fine, but all hypotheses rejected is unacceptable because you are making assumptions through the literature support. It is impossible that all hypotheses that you have constructed based on literature review are all rejected. That is impossible, okay? Because you have to remember, knowledge is universal. Knowledge is universal. It's the practice which could be different, okay? So just a bit of change of practice doesn't mean all hypotheses can be rejected. So if you find all hypotheses rejected, of course, there are reasons for you to start worrying about, okay? If you have 5 hypotheses, 3 rejected, 2 accepted, is still possible to rationalize and justify. 3 accepted, 2 rejected is okay, all right? 4 accepted, 1 rejected, easily justifiable. All right. Now, I think I have explained a lot. Later, I will explain a bit more if I get questions from you. Okay. Communicate the significance of your findings. Now you are relating it, your significance, relating it to the stakeholders where the data has been collected, right? And that's why also many students will do mistake. What they will do is they will tally with the previous, they'll relate with the previous research findings and forget to connect it with the other stakeholders, especially to the industry. Okay, that's very important. The respondents, okay, the premise where you have conducted the research, okay. Indicate how they support a refute experimental hypothesis, I have talked about it. Describe how these results advance the field of knowledge or field of study. Now, you are even discussing whether you are advancing the existing current extent of knowledge with your findings. Okay, say for example you have modified the theory, so you are advancing, you have extended theory, you are advancing the field of study. You have integrated 2 3 theory and proposing a new framework, integrated framework, you are advancing the field of knowledge. All right, that got to be also highlighted. Give supporting evidence information from previous work. I have said it before, right? And I just given you an example, like one possible interpretation of the result shows in figure, so we put include the possibility. It's like you are talking about how you are justifying your findings that you have, okay? And you are saying figure 5 are in contradiction to that person, and then you continue, the data suggests, and then you continue, say, in contrast other research findings and all that. That's how a discussion chapter could be made very rich in writing up with connection of the theory, connecting the industry together. All right. Okay, I think I have done quite a long discussion on this. As I said, this is the premier section of any PhD or DBA thesis or dissertation, and this has to be given enough time and few readings, few review, and few times of revision and editing when you write this section especially. Okay. Now the implications. If you want to have different section of implications and contribution of the study, then I'm giving you some of the clues. Certain university have both, so I'm giving you a clue here. Implications when you write, describe the significance. Significance, how significant it is in terms of industrial, in terms of the stakeholders of your research premise. Describe the significance in terms of the theory that I have explained. What are the substantial implications for the management, unions, other interest groups, or public policy, nation building? All right. So you are showing, describing the implication to the other stakeholders. That's what I have been arguing. Okay. If any methodological implications, like you are proposing a new methodology, you are proposing a new instrument like new questionnaire, or you are using totally new kind of data analysis method, there is also kind of implications, right, you have in this field of study. Okay. And you show how results progress the field of study. We talked about it. Okay. I prefer more on these contributions of this study. This section actually gives you the PhD. Those of us have completed PhD, we all struggle to answer one simple question. That is, what is your new knowledge contribution? What is your new knowledge contribution? And we all sweat to answer that question. Remember, when you develop your framework, you have extracted all the variables from the literature. And then say, for example, you have introduced a new variable through literature. And then after running the data, you found that variable is not significant. So now, where is your contribution in terms of new knowledge? All other 4 variables being tested and concluded by everyone that it has significant effect. They have significant effect. But the one you introduced new, and you argued in chapter 1, and you argued during the proposal defense that this is my new knowledge contribution, and after collecting data, you fail to prove it, and the hypothesis is rejected. So how do you stand now? You will be sweating, my brothers and sisters. You will have hard time to stand there during the Viva Voices session. Okay, it will be like question of life and death. You would be sweating. Okay. So in order to avoid that kind of situation, I would always recommend and suggest you to have at least two elements of new knowledge contribution. So in case one is rejected, the other one is still accepted. So you are safe. So you can introduce a new one independent variable and possibly introduce a new moderating variable. All right. So even the independent variable is not significant, that hypothesis is rejected. Possible that your moderating or mediating hypothesis is accepted, if not fully, partially. All right. So that's how I would suggest you to work on it. Do not be, carried away with one new variable it been introduced and be happy with that. And later you collect data, you run, and you found it's not significant, then you are dead. All right. You are just dead. So how do you write this chapter? Of course, you have to divide into three: new knowledge contribution, methodological contributions, and industrial or practical contribution. That's the three subsection under contribution of this study. Okay, this is the slide that I have talked about in many of my webinars. New knowledge contribution may come through verifying a theory, could be nullifying a theory, it could be modifying a theory, it could be extending a theory, integrating few theories, validating a theory, or could be testing effectiveness of a theory. Any one of it would be new knowledge contribution. When I say extending a theory, then you are talking about new independent variable being introduced, or you are introducing mediating or moderating variable. Okay, integrating, when you combine, you take variables from two or three theories and develop a new framework, integrated framework, right? So one of it has to be there. One of it must be there, my brothers and sisters, in the contribution of this study. This gives you your PhD. This entitles you to get the PhD, okay? As I said many times in my webinars, there was one occasion I was sharing a session, and I always ask my last question as a chairman. I ask the student, please tell me why you should be given a PhD degree. And the student was struggling, the student says, Prof, I spend 6 to 8 hours per day and I studied 4 years. So I say, because of that, you should be given a PhD. He said, yes. Then I said, what I said, okay, if a taxi driver is driving taxi for 20 years and 8 hours a day, can you give him a PhD for taxi driving? Of course not, right? So just 4 years of studying in the PhD program and spending 6 hours or 10 years per day does not entitle you to get a PhD degree. What entitles you to get a PhD degree is advancement of the knowledge in the field of study that you have undertaken. New knowledge contribution. That one you have to keep in mind, okay? You may have methodological contribution, practical contribution, but still, for PhD is an academic degree, there must be a new knowledge contribution. You should not forget about it. And those of you who are doing DBA, Doctor of Business Administration, for you, new knowledge contribution is not a must. It is not a must. But industrial contribution is a must. If you are doing a DBA, okay? If you are doing a DBA, industrial contribution is a must. But for PhD, new knowledge contribution is a must, okay? Now, the next one, methodological contribution. Here you can propose any methodology. Say, for example, most of the researchers previously used qualitative study, but in your case was quantitative. Like one of my students, he argued that most of the research previously used either quantitative or qualitative, and he used content analysis. So that was a methodological contributions, okay? So something, that is different. So you're proposing a new methodology. It could be testing a proposed methodology in a new context. A methodology being used before and only one premise, research premise. So now you are testing it in your new context, okay? Or possibly the research that you have done, previous researchers use either qualitative or quantitative, but in your case, you have used integration or triangulation. Integration, qualitative, quantitative, or triangulation. You start with qualitative, then quantitative, followed by qualitative. You started with quantitative, followed by qualitative, then followed by quantitative. That's called triangulation, right? So you are using different approach compared to the previous researches that you have reviewed. Okay, that is also a methodological contribution. Or you're developing new instruments. Say, for example, you have 5 variables, and one variable is completely new. You have taken from suggestion from future research, from one of the researchers who has proposed, and that variable there are no instruments, items, questionnaires available. So you develop 5 questions, 5 items of questions by yourself, and then you have validated it with the pilot testing and pre-testing, all right, with appropriate statistical tests, all that. So that is also a methodological contribution. You are contributing few new items for future researchers to conduct research in that field, okay? Or validating instrument in new context. Say, for example, a research has been undertaken in Australia, and that research has never been done in, say, Uganda, okay? So if you do research in Uganda using that instrument which has never been used in Uganda, then you are validating that instrument in the new premise of research in a new context. That is also a methodological contribution, okay? And the third one, area where we contribute, is the industrial contribution, or contextual contribution, or practical contribution. You know, there are different names in different universities and institutions that are being used. So here, if you are doing PhD, it is not a must, but it should be there, automatically there. Because when you have new knowledge contribution, there must be some kind of industrial contribution must be there, right? Because the problem coming from industry. But if you are doing DBA, it is a must. It is a must, okay? So through your research, there could be new issues being raised in the conclusion. You have raised questions at the beginning in chapter 1, and you are providing solution to these. And on the other hand, a good thesis would also raise more issues. And that gives you the premise to do more research, okay? So new issue got to be raised, okay? Would be very good, you know. The maturity of a researcher would be exhibited if you raise new issues in chapter 5. You know, you have provided solutions of the research question that you have talked about in chapter 1. At the same time, you are raising new issues with needs or require researchers, okay, to take the issues into and conduct a new research. Through your research, you can conclude that some changes of policy is required, okay? There is also an industrial contribution. We know, you know, most of the countries, we have a lot of policies. Good policies are there. But when it comes to implementation, so there's a very poor in many countries. Very good policies, but poor implementation. So through your research, if you have some kind of finding that shows that implementation is not good, or even the changes policies are there which are not very good, you can propose new policies to improve the working environment or the problem that you have in your research context. Adapting or adopting policies from other industry or other country. So when you are doing research, say for example in Indonesia, then you can adopt policies from Europe, you can adopt policies from Middle East or Africa, all right? Or you can adopt it or you can adapt it, okay? At the same time, it may happen that you are doing a study in service industry, and some researches that you have reviewed in the literature review section were done in the industrial sector, and from industry, certain policies can be adopted and implemented in the service industry. That could be also an industrial contributions. Changing mindsets, the most difficult thing for a human being, okay? People, all of us, we have certain mindsets, and this is something very difficult to change the mindsets, okay? Because the mindsets are created since we are born in our family environment, our friends, our teachers, you know, university, our working place, wherever we meet people and all that, you know, somehow at the beginning of our career, we already have certain kind of mindset when you go in the industry. Or if you are working in a company for a long time, you will also develop certain kind of mindsets. And when you move to another industry, it is required that you got to change that mindset, but you find it very hard to change. So through research, if you can propose certain things that need to be changed among the employees and all, that would be also a good industrial contribution. And of course, when the problem reoccur, right? When you have done a research, people have done research previously and make a conclusion, and now that occur again, and you are proposing new policies, recommendations to make improvement, and that might reoccur again, and you are making a conclusion that even though you are providing certain solutions and suggestions and all that, but the problem may reoccur again. Okay, so you are raising again an issue for new researchers to take on. Okay, so that is contribution of the study, and as I said, this particular section after discussion will make you sweat if you do not write it very well. Okay, most of the students, majority of the students, are very weak in writing this chapter. All right, those of you who are with me now, I have a particular video on this, how and what and how to write contributions of the study. It is available, the video available in my YouTube channel. You can watch that. Okay, you can view that, and you can get more information how to write contribution of the study in chapter 5. Okay, so I do have a separate video in my YouTube channel. Please view that, watch that. Okay, the next one, the recommendations. Okay, so now you are making conclusions. Okay, so when you are making before you make a conclusion, you are suggesting. Okay, you are suggesting certain recommendations for specific and some broad recommendations. Okay, and this could be some non-technical language, and it should be something feasible, workable, flexible, doable, and adaptable. Okay, I put many words there, five words there that could be understood. Okay, when you do a thesis, either PhD or DBA student, we bog down with the research problem and finding solution to it. And then after that, when it comes to recommendations, we just write something and that goes outside of the scope of our study, which is not expected. Okay, as an examiner, when you go as an internal or external examiner, or when we chair a PhD session, we often find this problem with the PhD students. You recommend something with totally out of the scope of your research. It shouldn't be. Anything you say in your research, it must be within the purview of your research scope, within the scope of your research. That got to be remembered. So some recommendation could be broad, and some recommendation could be very specific. Okay, so recommendation would be more on industrial. Okay, more on industrial or practical recommendation, very specific to the stakeholders. So I would always recommend students to write it. We may have subsections here also, recommendation for policymaker, recommendation for academic, recommendation for future researchers. You may have different subsection here, and then you be straightforward writing this chapter. Okay. Limitations, limitations and suggestions for future research. If you remember, those of you who attended the first session with me, I find many students write limitation chapter 1. I say, how can you write limitations chapter 1? You have not conducted your research yet. How can you write the limitation? Okay. Now here is a chance for you. Say, for example, you have 5 hypotheses, 3 rejected, 2 accepted. Now here you tell people, or 3 accepted, 2 rejected. Tell people here that limitation of this research is this. Okay. Even the previous research has found to be significant or mine is different, but of course, you have justified it. And you may have certain justifiable limitations. You can write it, but please remember, many students will do mistake here. Do not show too much limitation of your research here. In that case, you will be killing yourself. Okay, only reveal limitation that may not kill you. Do not reveal limitation that will kill you. Okay, reviewer, examiners will pick up that limitation and then they drill you. That how come you didn't take into account of that? Now you are saying you have limitations. You should have taken into account when you started doing the research. So please do not reveal everything here. Certain limitations are your secret. Keep that with you. Even you may not prefer to tell your supervisors. Okay, keep it with you. But some limitations, of course, you have to describe. Say, for example, your R square is low. your R square is 40%. What does it mean? It means the independent variables that you have chosen can explain only 40% factors of dependent variable, meaning 60% have not been captured in your research. So that is a huge limitation. But then again, in the discussion chapter, you should have already justified it by referring to the previous researches, R square. The previous research, the R square was also like that, okay? So that could be a way of doing, all right? But you have to put it that in the limitation of research. And this limitation that you write under this subsection, you should suggest them under suggestion for future research. You tell people, of course, my research have limitations, and the future researchers should undertake this. You know, those are the limitations you highlighted. Now you tell people, take these factors, okay? So you are telling some interesting, things here. The future researchers should be doing that. My research was confined into this. I couldn't capture that in my research. Future researchers should be doing this, and all that. So here, the future researchers will take some clue and take it as a new variable in their research. Okay, so this is something very important. All right, very important. But this section, suggestion for future research, provides an opportunity to cover up the limitations you have in your research. But again, please remember that do not reveal something that will kill you, okay, during the session and is non-defendable, and you will have serious repercussion on that. Okay, please remember that. Finally, your conclusions. Okay, and I tell many students that you have not done justice to you yourself. Conclusion is only half a page. Sometimes we find even a quarter page. I say, how come you have spent 4 years? You have a research story, research problem. You have 5-6 research questions. You have 5-6 research hypotheses, and now your conclusion is only one paragraph or 2 paragraphs. That does not justice. All right, your work. You are not doing a justice on yourself. Spending, working so hard for 4 years. Now you are making a conclusion so shallow. Okay. So now the final conclusion chapter here, your title of the research should reflect. You have to remember now what was the title, and now you are making a conclusion. Okay, the whole study should reflect here in conclusions. To discuss the how objectives or research question of the study have been made, and highlight the key findings, implication as well. Okay, that the research has revealed. Conclusion here mean that for each of the findings addressed, the research question hypothesis, and also you draw a conclusion to it. All right, so because you are making a conclusion, and this should be very brief. Generalized statements in answering in detail, in general, of the specific research question you have. That's what we call zoom lens approach. You are going through the micro to from micro to macro, or going from micro to macro. Okay, zoom lens approach. So you are going on macro, then going down to micro. That's what I would prefer. So how do we write the conclusion section of the research? So it should have the following. I said, number one, what is the strongest and most important statement you can make from your observation? As I said, beginning of today's presentation, some takeaway statements. Some takeaway statements. People will take home away certain thing from you. Okay, that's what it is. When you attend a session with anyone, and when the session is ended, you'll be pondering, what did I learn new today? All right. So that's what an examiner or reviewer will be looking at it. Okay, I read the whole thesis, 200 pages. I look at the research problem question, but what is I'm taking away from this research, from this thesis? Okay, something totally new, which is not existed in the literature, in the field of research. Okay, which is not existed in the methodology, which is not existed in the industry or the stakeholders that you have covered in your research. Refer back to problem posed and describe the conclusion that you reach from carrying out the investigation. I think it's understood. Summarize new observations, new interpretations, and new insights. These three are very important. New observations. Okay, I put this right. So you are summarizing new observation, new interpretations, and new insights. Okay, that have resulted from your work. Okay, So that conclude your research, right? And after this, you will have your references, and the different university has different referencing style that you got to follow. Okay. I will be sharing the slide in my webinar groups, so you will have this slide also. Last session, somebody asked me how to write an abstract, so I'm not going to discuss it, okay? But I'm going to share the slide with you, and you can point it to it. Okay, some other guidelines that you got to remember. All right. Generally, a dissertation proposed graduate students should be about 200,000 to 20,000 to 30,000 words. PhD could be about minimum about 200 pages, and a master's could be about 100 pages. Okay, that's expected. And then all other things that I mentioned here is depending on the institution or the university where you have enrolled yourself. Okay, so follow closely the guidelines given by the university. All right. So with that, I will end the presentation now, and then I will take the questions from those with me on the STEMIAD stage. Let them bring them back to the stage, and then after that, I will refer back to the questions, live chat questions. Okay. All right. All right. So I have, how many I have today? 1, 2, 3, 9 of them. Okay. 9 of them are with me now live. Those of you are live with me, if you don't mind, please switch on your camera so that I can see you. Would be good if you can. Okay. I have not shared the link with you. I will share a Google link with you. Please make sure you fill in so that you get a certificate. Today's certificate would be like as if you have attended all 5 sessions. Okay. So I'm not going to give the certificate for chapter 5. I'm going to give you as if like you have attended for all sessions. So the certificate will be given, and as I said, it's auto-generated. As soon as you fill in, you will immediately get the cert. Okay. All right. So now I'll open up the question and answer session. Anybody has question, please switch on, unmute yourself, and please raise the question.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, my name is Nuruddin Aisar from Nigeria. My question is that what happened when you did not recommend anything for further research in your thesis? Because some of the thesis, after reading the thesis, you will find out that there is no provision for further research. Does that mean they have 100% of what they are looking for? Or is there any problem or suggestion to that? That is my question.
Definitely, you must have a subsection, suggestion for further research. You have conducted a research, and through your research, you did not solve everything in the area of research. There are always scope for new research. That has to be narrated in the subsection. We call it suggestion for further research. That has to be there. It must be there. Nordin? It must be there. It must be there. All right. Next question, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Yes, Sister Nabila.
I'm from Bangladesh. I have a question that if I do not include limitation in chapter 1, then how can I explain my boundaries like locations, types of products, types of industries, these things? How can I explain those things?
If you have attended my first session, chapter 1 session, I have already mentioned, you have to have a subsection, we call it the scope of the study. The scope. So that's why you will basically tell everything about your boundary of research. You all are there. Okay. So in chapter 1, you will have the scope of the study. And then chapter 5, you will have limitations of the study. Okay. Because you cannot write limitation before you have conducted the study, right? So in chapter 1, what we are saying, Sister Nabila, you are talking about the scope of the study, the boundary of our research in terms of knowledge, in terms of methodology, and in terms of industry. That has to be done under the subsection called scope of the study.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Yes, those of you are live, and then I'll go there are a lot of questions there on the chat box, so I will go there. I'll give you the opportunity to ask the question. Sister Jainab, any question from you?
Yes, sir. I want to ask, is there any minimum number of new knowledge contribution in any research work?
There is no minimum, there is no maximum. Some kind of new knowledge contribution has to be there. And I have shown you many. You're modifying a theory, or you are nullifying a theory, you are verifying a theory, okay? You are integrating a theory, you are testing theory in a new context. No, I have given many there. You're extending a theory, at least one there is fine. Some
Okay.
kind of new knowledge contribution must be there. Okay?
Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome. Brother Adamu, first time I think you are live. Any question from you? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. You are muted. Unmute the microphone. Yes.
Yes, sir. So my question is regard to chapter 1, and I had at least have already covered the section. So I don't know whether should I ask it or leave it till maybe later. Thank you, sir.
I didn't really get your question. Can you repeat? Can you please say one more
I
time?
think some of my questions are on chapter 1, and I learned that if you have already covered that place, I don't know, should I ask the question or leave it, sir? Thank you.
Chapter 1, you will have research questions. There could be a few questions there. Generally, you have 2 to 5 questions. And then we would expect the answers of all questions in chapter 1. If you do not have answers of any questions, then you have to go back to chapter 1 and do the revision before you finally submit. Remember, chapter 1 to 3 is written before the proposal comes. So when you have the data, you run it, and finally you have the findings, then definitely you can go back to chapter 1. Based on the findings, you can revise the question that you have answers to the question. Okay? Can you unmute yourself? It looks like some sound is there. Can you mute yourself, Brother Adamu? Yeah, okay. Yes, Brother Majid, any question from you?
Salam alaikum, Prof. I don't have any question. At least my question has been answered. I was having an issue with the issue on the respect to limitation. I think it has been covered, but I don't have any other questions to ask, Prof. Thank you.
Okay. Brother Abenago? Any other question? Okay, let me share the link.
No questions, sir.
No questions. Okay, let me share the link first. Some respondents are looking. Okay. All right, I have already shared the link. You can fill in, and you will get auto-generated certificates will be there. Okay. So if no questions from those of you are with me now, let me go to the chat box and answer the questions from there. Okay. All right. Please upload the slide in the YouTube channel. I will do. I said when I have free time, definitely I will do. And presentation slide again. Okay, questions. Okay. Let me get the questions on the screen. Brother Saidu says, if majority of the study hypotheses are found to be rejected, while fewer other hypotheses supported, will the outcome of the research consider academic contributive? So you are talking about you have 6 hypotheses and 3 rejected, 3 accepted. Now, among the 3, if you have got your new the independent variable being introduced is accepted, then you are making a contribution. You are making a contribution. Even if the hypothesis is rejected, accepted, if you have introduced a new mediating or moderating variable, still you are contributing to the knowledge. It's academically acceptable. No question about it. Okay. All right. Next question is, I'm intending to do my master's in education is for ICT. Is it a good field? Of course. If you are doing education and you are taking ICT, that's the future of education is online education. If you do not want to agree with me, You will agree with me after 10 years. The future of education is online education, no doubt about it. All right. The COVID has created that situation, that environment now. Those of you who have attended class online, many of you prefer the classes online, especially those who are working and doing a study. They do not prefer to come to the class physically, rather they want to attend online. And because of COVID, many industry, many people have lost their job. People income has been affected. Many parents fail to now support the kids to study in these universities. And those definitely want to continue to study, and definitely they will go for online. Is cheaper and convenient for them. Okay, so your topic is definitely very good one. Okay, I will definitely recommend for you to do that. Okay, next one. After introducing a moderating variable, the hypothesis is still rejected. Can explain moderated contribution? Not really. If it is rejected, then you are not contributing. Okay, and that's the reason I said do not keep one. Keep two factors as contributory factor, one independent variable, one mediating, or one moderating. Or if all independent variables are being thoroughly researched, you cannot introduce anything new, then keep one mediating and one moderating. Mediating, you may have partial mediating, you have serial mediating, you can have, full mediating. So mediation, so all that are there. So if you are doing a study, then please take into account of that. Make sure that you have some kind of contribution towards the end of your research. All right. So that one you have to keep in mind. You cannot just introduce one and expect it to be significant, and then you are dead after the analysis because it's rejected. Okay. So that's why I'm recommending keep it more than one. Okay. Okay. Any recommendation written based on the weaknesses of the findings, limitation, study accepted in chapter 5? That's I have explained a lot. I said yes, you must have limitations of the study subsection. Thereby you will highlight. The limitations of the study. Okay, it must be there. Okay. How can you differentiate between significance of the study and implication of that? That's basically the same. Chapter 1, we might write significance. Chapter 5, we'll write implications. All right. Chapter 1, you have significance of the study. Chapter 5, we'll look at implications. Okay. So when you say significance and when you say contribution, both of them almost similar. That's why if you say contribution of the study, skip significance. If you say significance of the findings, then skip the contributions. Okay. No, I won't be doing that. I won't be doing that. Please don't request me that. I already do a lot of extra work for you. Okay, preparing the materials, delivering it, giving you the cert, and then I said I will upload the slide in the YouTube channel when I'm free. But those of you are connected, I have 4 WhatsApp group. I have mentioned many times. I have 4 WhatsApp group whereby I have 1,100 students from all over the world are connected with me directly. Please get into my webinar groups. My phone number, you can WhatsApp me. I will add you there. My phone number will be 6016 4049087. You didn't get it, listen to this video later. This video is already in my YouTube channel. You can listen to anytime. You can give my number and you can WhatsApp me. I will add you to my groups. Starting conclusions from macro to micro is called what, Prof? That's what I say. What did they say? I say sorry. What did they say? Camera something, right? Sometimes I even cannot recall. Okay, let me open and see it. Give me a few seconds.
Zoom something.
Because I'm talking quite a lot and then I forget. Zoom lens, right? The zoom lens approach.
Lens. Yep.
Zoom lens approach. That's what I said. You are going for macro and it's coming it down to the micro. Zoom lens approach is understood. Okay. No. Okay, next question. Is it necessary to have all 3 aspects of contribution? I said no. For PhD, new knowledge contribution is a must. Beside that, you will have contextual, practical contribution. It's just nice. If you do not have any methodological contribution, no problem. If your new knowledge contribution is very thin, very little, then you must have some kind of methodological and practical contributions. Next question. With regards to research limitation and conclusion, okay, no question here. Okay, this is nice. How do we handle integrating theory? This is something very good, you know. He will say that you have integrated an individual theory. All previous researchers use a single theory approach in their research. But in my research, I used few theories together and integrated them and proposed a new framework for this field of study. And you can name it, you know. For my student, what I did, we proposed a new model by taking the first alphabet of the 5 variables. Say, for example, you have 5 variables. You take the first alphabet of every variable, you just name it. Like subqual, right? Parasuraman has proposed subqual and everybody use on the customer loyalty research. You can propose any framework. So you have integrated 3 theories, and based on that, you're proposing a new model. Okay, so like subqual, something like CAPM and all that. Okay, so every variable, the first alphabet you take it, and then you propose a new framework. Okay, so that could be good. Okay. I did analysis for somebody, and only 2 out of 5 have they accepted. Would it be accepted? I said, oh, it's definitely acceptable, but there must be justification. If it's a 3 rejected, then they must provide some justification by relating it to the premise of research. All right, you have to show some policy differences, or you have to show the different characteristics of the respondents, the demographic variable that you have. Okay. Is certificate already uploaded? Should I repeat what I have in my findings under conclusion? Yeah, you can repeat some, but in different different structure of sentencing. Okay, not the same thing you copy and paste. That Mali student will do. Please don't do that. No repetition. Don't copy and paste. Write it again and highlight more. It's not a problem at all. Okay. Can rejected hypothesis also feature under conclusion? Definitely. That's always our emphasis. Those accepted you highlight, and you forget to highlight the rejected one. Sometimes rejected hypothesis could be your great contribution. You know, in all researches found to be significant, and you are the first one found to be in your research it found to be insignificant. It's a contribution. Of course, you have to relate it to the industry data, demographic factors, and all that to justify it. Okay. Is certificate already uploaded? What factors could be responsible type 2 error? I don't think I'm going to answer that. It's very much of a statistical thing. I don't think I'm going to do that. What about rejected hypothesis? I talked about it. Please check the link. It's not working. It is working. There's so many people watching. It is working. And somebody said, I have already got my e-certificate. Yeah, definitely. If you fill in form, automatically generated. You will immediately get it. In case if you don't get it, email, check the spam folder. If it's not in the inbox, check the spam folder. Okay, it is there.
So it's not there. It has not been there.
It is there in the chat box. It is chat box. I have provided the link. Okay, I paste it again for you, and okay, and okay again I posted it. Okay, this link is there. Click there. It is in the chat box, live chat box. Okay. All right. I think I have Dr. Salim Mansoor here. Would you like to share something, Dr. Salim Mansoor? Can you unmute your microphone? Dr. Salim Mansoor, are you there? The link is working because few of them already got the cert. Definitely it is working. Okay. Definitely it is there. Okay. It is working. Okay. Can we use underpinning theory as a contribution? That underpinning theory, but you have to have something there. Either modification of the theory, modifying theory, or you are extending the theory or nullifying the theory. You are verifying the theory, you are validating the theory, some kind of thing had to be there, even with this underpinning theory, okay? All right. So that's the last question I had. Yeah, as I said, Isubala said, I have already received the cert. Definitely is working, and many saying they have received. So please fill in the form. Arobani also said he also received. Fill in the form properly. You try once, it's not working, try second time, it is working. It should be working because you have tested before you post it to you. Okay, we have tested that. All right. So with that, maybe I take the last question from those of you with me. Last question. Yes, Brother Majid.
Salam alaikum, Prof. It's not a question. It's more like an appreciation.
All right.
We can't thank you enough for making our life journey to be interesting, because people coming from our own side of the world in Nigeria, we never thought research could be made easy like this for us. It was like a tug of war, and ever since we've been on the platform, almost going to 2 years now, I think. My research journey has been so interesting, and those of us too coming from Nigeria can testify to what I've said. I want to appreciate you and thank you so much for the selfless service you are giving to us, and may Almighty Allah strengthen you for us. I don't have any question but to thank you for what you have done to us, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof.
Welcome. Thank you. And let me mention also the next webinar would be possibly next week, and next webinar would be a very interesting one for those who have not defended proposal or those who are going to defend the proposal. Okay, so next webinar title is Perfect Proposal Defense, Common Questions and Common Mistakes. Okay, Perfect Proposal Defense, Common Questions and Common Mistakes. That is the next webinar topic, and I will update you, those of you are with me in the webinar groups, and I'll post it also in the Facebook, and also if you keep an eye on my YouTube channel, it will be also there. Okay, I have received many WhatsApp messages that they have received the certificate. So those of you are saying that it is not working, please try. Please keep trying. Definitely is working. Many have WhatsApp me. It's working. Okay, it's working. So you can try, and I see many messages coming still in my handphone as well as in the chat box. They have received the set. Some of you did not receive. Those of you didn't receive, make sure your email address is correct, because it will be sent to your email. Okay. So with that, I would like to conclude today's session. Those of you have been with me for last 5 sessions, this series. Thank you very much for being with me, and hopefully, I will see you in the next session on proposal defense. Okay, I had a webinar before on common question asked during the final Viva Voices session, right? Those of you have attended. The video is available in my YouTube channel. I got many requests from many students that can I have another session on proposal defense. So next week, inshallah, if I'm available, then I will conduct a live webinar focusing on the common questions usually raised during the proposal defense sessions, and also some tips and tricks. How can you tackle the questions as well as satisfy the examiners and pass the proposal decision. Okay. All right. So those of you are saying that it is not working, please keep trying. You can
Please,
save.
sir, can you resend again, please, sir? We can't find the link at all.
But many say they have received, and still many messaging that they have received it. Sri Devi is saying that the link was printed big.
Those of us with you.
Honestly, it's not there.
It says hello, Saidu say he's received. Actually, many have sent me a message in handphone also they have received. Save the link in your computer. In case if you are using handphone, might not be working, then you try in a computer later. Save the link, because I'm not going to close the link that soon. Okay, I will keep it for some time.
We have not even seen the link at all.
Oh, you didn't see the link. Possibly then you do not know where to see. No, it is in the chat box. Maybe you do not know where it is. In the chat box.
Prof, sir, can you probably share the link on the private chat because it's not there. It's not on the private chat link.
Oh, private.
We are on private chat. It's not there.
Okay, that's why. That's why. Understood. Okay.
Okay.
Because you're on the stage. That's why. All right. Brother Mushtaq said he is not working. No, I think he should be working. Since others have worked, he should be working. Please keep trying. All right. So those of you who cannot get it at all, then knock me in my WhatsApp WhatsApp group. Then we'll share it there again for you. Okay. With that, thank you very much, and see you in the next webinar on a perfect proposal defense. All right. So, assalamu alaikum, and you all take care, and see you in the next session, inshallah.